Welcome. My name is Matt. I've been in my shop here for over a decade, rebuilding and building. I started out with a goal to save some of our history people were throwing away and learn some new skills. I have thousands of pictures, things like this, and this, and this, and this, and this. Well, you get the idea. I started this channel to video document some of my shop projects with a new goal. I want to encourage you to get out in your shop and carry on our traditions. We're going to get into some crazy things around here, so please click that subscribe button for me so you get notified of new content. I thought it best to start this channel by introducing myself and giving you a shop tour. Like mentioned, my name is Matt. I grew up in the heartland where I am today, where there's a lot of this, and this, and this, and this, and this. Well, you get the idea. I have a day job that keeps me busy, and I spend what time I can, nights and weekends, out here in the shop. While I've sold a few things over the years to upgrade and expand my tools, I don't do what I do out here for the money. I do it to relax, blow off steam, and really just have fun trying new things. The time I've been able to spend out here the past decade has been some of my most enjoyable. And that's part of the reason I want to share my shop time with you. This is my wife, Erin, the prettiest Irish lass I've ever seen. Has the patience of a saint. Has to put up with me. Had the cops stop by one night in the AM several years ago, knocking on the garage door. I yelled, "Hey, cut that out. I'm trying to grind in here." Anyway, she lets me get away with a lot more than she probably should. This is my dog, Rory. I call her our dog. She's 10 and is not a saint. She's a lot like me. Can't sit still and gets into more trouble than she probably should. You'll see her around the shop from time to time, always with a Frisbee. This is my dad, Mark, and this is my brother, Josh. They're a big reason I'm out here in the first place. I have to expect we were a lot like you, growing up, taking things apart, running around old dirt bikes and yard carts, taking the Honda Big Red up to the general store, racing go-karts at the local dirt track, just getting into everything we could. Dad, he's a jack of all trades. If you need something fixed, he can fix it. He'll figure it out. He taught Josh and I a little bit of everything and always encouraged us to dig in and understand. A quick shout out now for all the tools we lost and things we broke over the years. It wasn't for nothing, Pop. And Josh, well, let's just say we've been partners in crime for a long time. If you need a wheelman that can grit his teeth and hammer down around the corner, you look him up. I hope we can get both of them on the channel in the future. Another thing I want to talk about is the word heritage. Hold on. Ah, that's better. I washed up Old Glory special for this introduction. I'd like to keep her that way for a little bit if I can. Where were we? That's right. Heritage. The values, traditions, and artifacts passed down from generation to generation. As you see, it's the first word in the channel name, and that's because heritage is very important to me. It doesn't matter where you're from. The people that came before us and the things they did matter. All the generations of dads and moms, grandpas and grandmas, and on. Their ingenuity and hard work are why we have it pretty easy today. I tip my hat to those of you that keep their memory alive and carry on our heritage. I want to honor their legacy in my shop and with this channel. First, by saving some of our artifacts. Every engine, bike, tool, sign, etc. out there has a story of our values, a story of people who put their blood, sweat, and tears in, showed up every day to provide for their families and make the world a little better. I have a few things here that allow me to save some of the worst stuff, but I started with some basic tools and carb cleaner, and I guarantee you can too. We'll get to that in another video. And it's not only about remembering the past, it's also about carrying forward that tradition of ingenuity and perseverance, challenging ourselves to try something new and get out of our comfort zone. I can't tell you how many wrenches have been thrown against that garage door over the years, but that's part of it. It's like life. We try and fail, and we keep trying until we get it right. That's our way. Never give up, never surrender. I mentioned earlier, my single goal here is to try and inspire a few of you to get out in your shop, rebuild something from your childhood, create something new, make a space that you want to enjoy with your friends. Doesn't matter, just get out there and honor our heritage. Speaking of that, I love seeing the things you guys are working on, and I really like cool shop spaces. If you have a project or space you're proud of, send it to me at heritagerestoworks@gmail.com. Write a note or two about your project or something unique about your shop space. Hopefully I can get a couple of those from you and showcase them here on our channel. The second way I've been able to honor our heritage is when I rebuild something, I learn about the people in place that created it. I have an idea about making some short videos about some of those people, like Stephen Briggs, Willis Carrier, the Davidson brothers. Who were they and how did they change our lives forever? And I think we can look at some cool inventions along the way, maybe learn a thing or two together. If you've made it this far, I appreciate you. Please click that like and subscribe button for me. Help me achieve the channel goal and get others engaged. Let's move on to the shop tour. This is my shop, a grand 12 by 24. Small for sure, but I've been able to make it work. You do have an oven on one side, a sandblast cabinet on the other. There's a welder powder coat machine over here. I am using the unfinished portion of my basement. I have a few tools down there, mainly use it for storage and move things up as I need, usually with her help. We'll look at all that in a second. Throughout my time working on things, and still today, I do the best with what I have. I wish I had a nice fixture table, but it's just not in the budget. You'll see when I do a review of my Springer fork build, I used a 5/8 inch piece of MDF and kids' building blocks to lay it all out, clamp it, and tack it. I know some of you might gasp at that, but it works great. I've had it out on the main road full throttle several times. Anyway, I do the best with what I have, and I think the same can be said for any of us. Just do the best with what you have and what your budget allows. Also, I have not been formally trained in any of this. I've learned over time by trying and failing, by listening to people like my dad and brother, my uncles, and other people I meet along the way. I'll never claim to have the best way of doing something. And just like with tools, I do the best I can with the knowledge I have, and I try to expand and improve over time. If you ever have any tips or tricks or find doing something different than I do works better, I want to know. Leave me a comment or send me a message at heritagerestoworks@gmail.com. Light. I have a few of the larger overhead lights turned off because it's just too bright for the camera. Plus the shine from the top of my head might blind you. But I do like light, and I think it's very important that you can see what you're working on. In your main area of your shop where you're doing most of your work, make sure it's lit well. Let's take a closer look at the shop. I have to start at my main bench. Outside of my little red toolbox and a few tools, this was the first thing I bought for the shop. I got it at a yard sale. It was about 10 bucks. It was rickety, kind of moved all around. I brought it home, got some 2x4s, reinforced it and squared it up. I raised it about 5 inches, get it to more of a comfortable working height. I can't say how important it is to have a nice bench that you can work and sit at. It's extremely important. And I try to keep the area clear. Doesn't always happen like that, but it is nice. And I like to sit and spend time here when I'm out here in the shop. A couple other things, the memorabilia, mainly things that I've gotten just from auctions over the years. Been in a box. Some of them I didn't even know they were there. The Virginia map and then the truck advertisements. Of course, I love the ships. Just the thought 200, 300, 400, 500 years ago, those guys with their foot on the bow, just going into the unknown and seeing what they could find. It's crazy and very cool. And then of course, my little bookshelf here, that was one of my first welding projects, TIG welding projects, to just learn and try to improve my skills. I keep a few manuals there. Of course, the first aid kit, always have to keep that close. Couple drawers, yeah, great spot. I have the LED lighting. I put that in very early. It's been awesome. It was a great project to kind of learn the RBG wiring and also practice soldering. So effectively, over the course of a couple nights, I probably soldered 200 connections around here. So it was a great experience, a good learning experience. I have found ways to improve, have improved my skills. Definitely something I think that we can do together on the channel in the future. I'll show you guys and we can rewire a lot of these LEDs up here. So that's kind of my main spot. Again, like to keep it clear. Of course, my toolbox has all the basic tools, right? So your screwdrivers, pliers, wrenches, sockets, Allen wrenches, drill bits, a few air tools in there. I don't use those too often, but get them out from time to time. But really just your basic stuff in there. I do have this metal shrinker stretcher, and I'll get it out. And it's a Lancaster. The jaw is replaceable. And I started with this lever, pulling on that for the first couple of years. And it's tough, you know, you got trying to pull on the lever, you're guiding your piece of metal with the other hand. And I thought, man, I am getting too old for this. There's got to be a better way. So I built this stand, and I actually built it out of some scrap metal that I had. Scrap tubing, I had some real thick wall tubing. I had double piece I welded together up here, and then a little thicker piece down here. The gussets I had left over from the trike build, so just some metal strap at the bottom and the top. Really all made out of scrap, and then I powder coated it cheater blue, which is one of my favorite colors. It's a transparent blue top coat, and it's shot over polished aluminum or another shiny base to make it really the candy color pop. But I'll show you here. It works off a 3-pedal. There's an air cylinder here, and there's an air regulator, so you can give it, you know, how much juice you actually want or need, depending on how much you want to bite the metal. And then this 3-way pedal is really cool, and that's what, of course, controls it all. I'll show you if you're interested how I put it together, but I'll give you a quick demonstration here on this little piece of 18-gauge sheet metal. So you see that? It frees up your hands. You don't have to worry about anything. Oh man, I thought I'm getting too old. So this has been a little bit of a lifesaver and has come in really handy. And I like it. It's pretty cool. I've got the 60-gallon Craftsman air compressor here. Of course, this isn't what I started with. I looked and couldn't even find a picture of what I started with. This is the second air compressor I had. It's a Campbell Houseman. I got it at an auction. I ended up replacing the copper tubing and the MPT piping up for the hookup. It worked really good for me over several years. I ended up upgrading to this. The main thing that I use for air out here is the sandblaster. So that Campbell Houseman worked well. It was a little small, so I could only blast for so long. Your air compressor has a cycle time, and you really shouldn't run it too much past that in one go. So I'd have to take quite a few breaks. Upgrading to a little bigger air compressor made it a lot easier. I can run about 30 minutes at the blast cabinet before taking a break. So that's really not too bad. I have my air line on the ceiling here. It makes it a whole lot easier when you're working in a small shop. If you can get anything off the floor, do so. And that's come in very handy. This is a secondary area. Of course, it has my little red toolbox that I started with on the floor here. Now I keep my measuring equipment, calipers, squares, other things like that. In the top, I keep some of my oils, WD, honing oil. I have these clear plastic bins, and the main thing I use these beakers for is really Cerakote. Not all kinds of Cerakote, but some of them require some precise measuring and mixing. And below here I have some storage. Effectively, this top drawer is all of my Maricruiser Alpha outdrive rebuild tools, so the shim tools and other things like that to properly rebuild an Alpha 1, Gen 1 or Gen 2 outdrive. All of my welding stuff, welding consumables, batteries for my helmets, those are always running out on me from time to time. Of course, sanding discs, sandpaper, some cleaning supplies. Down here, I do like these white trays. What I found was I was getting bags of bolts, I wasn't getting them sorted in time. These white trays are really great for that. I know the bottom one has all my standard bolts and the top one has all my metric. And they'll live there until I can get them sorted. And what I do is I put them in a clear tote in Plano tackle boxes. Just those little ones. I'm trying to get a little more organized with my bolts. I find I'm rebuying things that I probably have somewhere around here. So that's an area I can get a little better at. Just moving on here to the powder coat machine that I have. It's a Columbia Coating Hyper Smooth 03 LED. It's been a great gun. I have this, what they call a vortex cup. It shoots really well. I have a ground rod over on the other side of the blast cabinet that I drilled a hole through the concrete and drove into the ground. And I have a dedicated ground line coming in. So it works really well. I've had really great success with this. I didn't start with this. I started with a Eastwood, I think it was, gun, and upgraded to this a few years later when I started powder coating more and more things and got the bigger oven. So it's been a great gun. I have a dedicated air line coming to it. The powder coat machine does not require much air. It requires maybe 4 to 6 pounds of air really to drive this machine. So you don't need a big tank to powder coat. And then of course the welder, it's an Everlast, really the mean green machine. It's been good. It was recommended by my brother. I ended up going with it. And really for what I do out here, it has been great. I try to buy US when I can. I don't do this for a living. I don't have an unlimited budget that I can just buy anything. So I got to make some decisions. And this has really been a great machine. It's a 3-in-1 combo. So it's TIG, stick, and a plasma cutter, which is just awesome. The day I got the plasma cutter was great. You know, not having to cut all my metal with a grinding wheel for sure. So that's nice. It's worked great for me. I did replace the line that came with it with a leather line, just a little stronger. I ended up replacing one of the water lines. I got a leak in that, so just replaced the tubing in it. It was pretty inexpensive. I didn't buy the tubing that, you know, to replace it all. You can get just regular water tubing a little cheaper, just the same size. I can show you how to do that at some point. It's pretty easy. But yeah, it's been a great machine. It's water cooled. It is the 256 SI, so it will TIG weld up to 250 amps. It's water cooled. And then of course it'll stick weld, you know, very thick and do that kind of thing. Plasma cut, I've plasma cut with it up to a 1/2 inch without any problems. It'll run 60 amps on the plasma cutter. So it's been a great system. I have 2 argon tanks. It's about 30 to 40 minute drive for me, about an hour round trip or more to refill argon. So I got 2 of these tanks. They're not real big so that I can move them around. But yeah, I take both to fill them each time I go, usually maybe 3 to 4 times a year, just depends on how much I'm welding out here. But been a great system, really love it. I use the pedal, I learned on the pedal. I do use the trigger when I tack when the bike is on the frame jig. So I don't typically use the pedal for that. It's a little quicker to kind of move around and tack here and tack here and tack here. But then I'll pull the frame off, put it on my table, and then I'll use the pedal and weld. And I encourage you, if you want to get into TIG welding, try the pedal, use that pedal. It works really well. And you'll get a feel. It's like pressing on the gas, right? You need more heat, you need a little more, you need to go quicker. Just give that pedal some more power, right? It's pretty cool, I like it. Moving on to the oven. It's 4 feet by 4 feet by 6 feet high. It's from Davenport Coatings. It's got 3 heating elements in it. It has been awesome. This has allowed me to powder coat bigger and bigger things. I did a go-kart some months ago. That's one of the bigger things I couldn't have done before. And before, I had a little home oven. Just like it sounds, I looked and looked for a picture. The only one I could find was the one from the Facebook ad that I bought it off of. But I bought it from an old farmer about 5 miles from here. And I went out, backed the old Blue up to pick it up out in the barn. Got it home, got it out back. There were mice in it. Oh, it was terrible. And I've cleaned some pretty rough stuff over the years. So cleaning that up was pretty rough. And then the first few months of using it, I had to create I had some leftover Romex 8 wire, and I created an extension cord to run the oven outside out back because it stunk so bad. Oh my gosh, it was terrible. I did that for probably 2 years and then finally upgraded to this. But use what you got, right? Like we talked about earlier, you got to use what you've got and just make it work and make it work. And I think even doing that for a couple of years, doing smaller parts, trying to use the heat gun, telling what my temps were and other things like that, it helped me refine my skills and get better. So when I did get this and could do bigger things, you know, it just all transitions well. Next up is the blast cabinet. This is a scat blast system made by TP Tools. I think they're out of Ohio, if my memory serves me correctly. A great cabinet, it's been awesome. I've had it a few years. Like most things out here, I didn't start with this, of course. I started with a used Harbor Freight pot blaster. And I'll show you in a minute because if it won't fit in this cabinet, it gets blasted out back with that pot blaster still. But it's nice having a cabinet. Early on, I did move up to a Harbor Freight. I think it was a 24-inch cabinet that I bought used. Used that for a couple of years. I do find the longer cabinet is really nice though, and I would say it blasts better. I often use crushed glass in here. It's also something TP Tools makes. It's made from recycled glass. It gives metal, aluminum a nice profile to adhere to paint. And no matter what you're painting or how you're painting, it's important, even if you don't have a cabinet, that you rough up the surface so you get good adhesion. This model's 48 inches. I think I have 34 inches corner to corner. So it's a good cabinet. I have the soda attachment with it, and yeah, it does a great job on different things. I do have it raised. It's still sitting on the pallet. I find it's a little better. It raises it up. It's a little more comfortable. Still have to hunch over a little bit, but it's a good cabinet for sure. Next up is the oxyacetylene torch. So can't get along without this. Of course, for cutting, brazing, removing a stuck exhaust pipe from a very old engine. It comes in handy quite a lot. So always something good to have on hand. You can typically buy small bottles of this, and you don't use it a lot, I would say, depending on what you're doing. It does come in handy though. And of course, got to keep your fishing equipment close, right? Also have the Shop Fox dust collector. I use this both when I'm powder coating and when I'm running the sand blaster. So I change the connection out based on need. It does a pretty good job. I'd say the sand blaster, it does awesome, really keeps it clear. I should be able to shoot some video over my shoulder in the future when we're blasting different things and getting stuff cleaned up and ready for paint. And then the powder coat system, when I roll that cage out, I use a hose from the top, try to collect as much as I can, but effectively that's probably the biggest challenge I'm up against with the powder coat, just keeping everything clean. The Shop Fox though, I put it through its paces and it does a good job. I'm happy with that purchase. Next up is the parts washer, just your basic Harbor Freight's parts washer. I use it from time to time. I would say generally I do a second wash, either in a bucket outside or a tote, or occasionally in the bathtub. Use what you got. I also have this, what's called a Stewart Handiworker. And this is something I found online and it was seized up. I got it all de-seized. It's a very interesting tool. As you can see from the picture, around 1915, 1920 is when these were made. And can you imagine during that time having one of these on the back of your wagon? You can reshoe your horse, you can fix a wagon wheel, make you some new brackets. It's got a grinder, it's got drill bits. Pretty amazing little machine. I think the automobile came along and put this out of its misery, but interesting piece of history for sure. I hope as I grow and expand my shop space, I can get some better equipment and build some of the gears and other things that are missing and make it complete again. And this base, very cool base, my dad found it for me and gave it to me. I cleaned it up, I powder coated it. The white logo that you see here is actually a white powder coat base. And then you overlay a high temp vinyl decal. And then I did a green, army green powder coat over it. So it looks really great. I made a little base for it, put a little cork gasket in there. I found these brackets at the hardware store, and interestingly enough, a piece of steel that wide, would have cost me a pretty penny. And I found these, they're tensioner bars, were like 12 bucks a pop, bought one each. Brought them home, had to dunk them in my barrel to get the black powder coat that was on them off. And then I blasted them quick for the profile and recoated them that army green. But they worked out great, castered it so I can move it around. As a side note, anything that you're cleaning up that's powder coated, it's very hard to blast that off. It's very tough paint. So you do typically need another form of paint removal, at least as a first pass if it's something that's powder coated. To get it off there. But it turned out really good. I'm happy with it and hope to finish it out someday and make it whole again. Next on the list is the trusty old bench grinder. Everybody and their brother has one of these. You can pick them up super cheap. I have an upcoming video where I'd like to take you through mechanical, electrical, woodworking, the basics of getting into restoration for those of you who don't know or don't have anything. And during that video, I'd like to take you through where I go to look for stuff. Outside of friends, family, just people I meet here and there that have things, there's some really good resources out there where you can pick stuff like this up, and it typically works every time. I've never picked one of these up that didn't work. It might have required a plug replacement or something like that, but they're pretty trusty tools. Then I have the Harbor Freight drill press. I've had this for a long time. It's been put through its paces. I've drilled chromoly with it so much, and aluminum, wood, a little bit of everything. Definitely not the nicest drill press, but it does work for what I need. Definitely on the list for something in the future to upgrade, get an actual floor bench press, maybe a mill, who knows. But if I look and take you underneath the bench, I do have a shop vac that I use to keep things clean, and then my little pot blaster down there that I was telling you about earlier. And I'll get this out for just a minute. And this is what I typically use if it won't fit in the cabinet. And not typically use, but just absolutely have to use it. And it's a great little pot blaster, like I said. I got it off the guy for maybe 40 bucks. This front leg was broken off. I ended up just JB welding it. So it works good. I used it for a long time outside, out back, like I said. It's not the cleanest thing, but it didn't tear the yard up too bad, I'd always blast on a pallet or something like that. And again, I still have to use it today. If it won't fit in the cabinet, it still works great. So definitely a recommendation there if you're getting into it and you have a budget and looking for something that'll clean metal well and you're not doing a lot of it. This is a great investment for sure. And you can buy a used one. Next is the metal bench that I have in the center of my shop. I added this about 4 or 5 years ago and I really love it. It was a great addition. Like I mentioned, it's not a fixture table. I do have holes drilled in it in different places so I can mount engines to it and clamp different things if I need. It has plenty of weight where it doesn't jump around on me, and the top's thick enough where it doesn't warp on me when I weld. It's been great. You can ground it out anywhere on the table and just kind of go to town. So that's nice. It has some weight to it, like I said, so running engines on it and different things like that is really great. It's been a good table for me, and really this is where we'll spend most of our time. I do have the Colombian 606 bench vise sitting up here. I found it several years ago. It was locked up. I did electrolysis, a few other things to clean it up and get it freed. It's working vise now. I use it constantly. It's a great vise. I love it. Add some weight to the table too when I'm running different engines so things aren't jumping around on me. But overall, that's where we'll spend most of our time, looking at different projects, looking at different wiring and things of that nature. Let's take a look at the basement. I call this my half of the basement, and we'll have to spend some time down here because I have a few tools. Mostly it's used for storage. I have the JD squared manual tubing bender. I have a 1-inch and a 7/8" die for this bender. And you can see it's a good bender, pretty basic model, but it works great. Rogue Fab, I know they have a really nice hydraulic bender, but that's not really in the budget. I've used it for several years and works good. Next up is my storage. I have 2 rows here. This front row has most of my woodworking tools over here. I do have a router. I use the router a lot even when I'm building and metalworking, mainly with 1/4-inch hardboard. I do templates for my plasma cutter, and we'll do that several times in future videos. Other routing equipment and other tools. I do have my paints as well. So all of my Cerakote and some powder coats. I also have some oil-based paints in here. Clamps, woodworking clamps, sawzall, jigsaw, table saw, miter saw, planer, and other things. Just more woodworking. Mostly if I'm doing a specific woodworking project, I'll cover much of what I have upstairs, bring up what tools I need. Occasionally I'll set up outside if I'm just cutting something small where I don't have to cover everything, but move things up and down as needed, and it works really well. And moving over to the other side of my unfinished basement, I do have an engine stand for a larger V8, whatever engine, and an engine puller. I've rebuilt a few of the larger engines, but usually don't do that. I just don't have a lot of space. It gets pretty busy. You have to use up a lot of what I have. I do have the shop press, so that's come in handy a lot. Works good, just a cheap press, I think 12 ton. Next up is the English wheel, and I really like this thing. I've only had it for maybe 2 to 3 years. And I remember when I first got it, I got it on a Thursday, and I was really busy at work, and I couldn't get to it that day, couldn't get to it Friday. So it was really late Friday. Aaron had went to bed. It was maybe 10, 11 o'clock at night. I was down here unboxing it, put it together. I had an 18 gauge piece of sheet metal. I was down here going, wah, 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 wah. And I hear from the steps, what's going on down there? And I yelled back up, none of your business. Wah, 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 wah. Aaron came down, we had a good laugh, but I love this thing. It's a lot of fun. We'll use this quite a bit, even on the air ride bike. I still have a lot of work there, part of that is making a front and rear fender, which we will definitely use this on, but it's a lot of fun. I like it. It's cool. We'll use it in the future. Moving on, here I have my electrical equipment. So in this top tote, my soldering iron, some wire, my different electrical pliers. I have my desktop DC tester, one of them. I typically use this one for electrolysis, but it works really well. Other things in here, the lower tote actually has a lot of my wiring and different things like that, clips, switches. I need to go through this and organize this better. But cool totes, we'll get those out in the future when we do some electrical work, LED work, and other things like that. Otherwise, back here you'll see what I call my power sports corner. A lot of different parts, headers, shrouds, gears, and things like that that I've just collected over time. The other thing I wanted to tell you about, I forgot to tell you upstairs, were these plastic fast food trays. These things work great. They're inexpensive. I just looked them up. They're up to about $2 a pop, but you can buy 12 of them for about 25 bucks. And they work really well. When you're taking stuff apart, if you're rebuilding something, it keeps different things contained, and it's easy to move smaller pieces from place to place. I use it a lot, that smaller blue one I had upstairs on the bench. I use that, for example, if I take a carburetor apart. All the little pieces and scraps from that carburetor I'll leave put on the tray, and then I can move it around, and has lips so it doesn't, little pieces don't run off and things like that. So definitely a good recommendation, pretty inexpensive. You can get them anywhere online, and they're very handy. That's an old opposing twin Onan engine, and we're going to rebuild that in the future. I'm not exactly sure what we're going to put it on, maybe a go-kart or something like that, we'll see, but I think that'll be a cool project in the future. You'll see behind me, that's where I keep all my scrap metal, different pieces of tubing, aluminum, chromoly, some plate steel, some other sheet metal and things like that. I tend to only use chromoly, 4130 chromoly in my builds, but that's mainly because I have an aircraft supplier here close, Wix Aircraft, and I'm not sponsored in any way, but I do appreciate Eric, the sales guy up there. Always friendly and really helpful. And I've been buying from them for several years. I don't pick up a lot because I don't build a lot, so I don't mind too much, and their prices are really good. And again, if I can buy local, I try to. Next thing on the list is the motorcycle frame jig. And I did purchase this. I went back and forth on whether or not to build one or buy one. Have to make some decisions sometimes, don't have unlimited time, so ended up buying this one. It's been really great. It's important to have a frame jig to keep everything square when you're building from scratch. You don't have to buy one. You definitely can build one. I'm trying to come up with a very easy plan where you can just hook a neck in, something that's pretty easy to build, but we'll look to that in the future. And we'll talk more about this when we go through the air ride and the trike build. It's important, and the plane of reference, all those different things we'll talk through, rake and trail, things like that. All very important, and all things we'll go through here on the channel. Another thing, we're going to work on the lighting down here together over the next couple months. I have a couple old TVs that the trash won't take, and I have a really good way to repurpose those and make something cool and learn a little something in the process. So stay tuned for that. I'll meet you back upstairs. I'd like to take you through a few more things. First, shop organization. As we looked around here, you saw I try to stay organized. This is especially important in a small space. But I'm not some kind of organization magician. I fall off this wagon all the time. As I work around here, it gets messy. But every once in a while, I take a day and I get everything cleaned up. It can be overwhelming at times, especially when I'm working on a large project over an extended period of time. But get your buddy over, employ your kids. If it takes an hour or a month, do what you have to do to get your shop organized. It's easier and more fun to work in when you can move around and find stuff. Make it a space that you're proud of and that you want to be in. One of my favorite things is in the morning, especially when the weather is nice. I'll come out here when the sun is coming up, open the garage door and the back door, and just sit. Drink my coffee and just feel the world come alive. Really get my mind right to take on the day. If there's things everywhere and it's all covered up and my bench is covered, that's no fun. Get organized and make it a space you want to be in. I also want to talk about the importance of having goals in your life. You'll never get to where you want to be if you don't know where you're going. Having a goal creates a roadmap. The goal itself doesn't do anything. It's what comes next, the question, how do I get there? Answering that question is what creates the roadmap that will get you to where you want to be. Take this channel, for example. My goal here is to encourage you to get out in your shop and honor our heritage. So how do I do that? First, I needed a platform. YouTube was an obvious choice. I use it regularly and I can post long videos. I have never been in front of a camera and I have no cinematic experience, so that might be a problem, but I'll do the best I can and hopefully improve over time. I'm usually working out here very late, so I'll try not to pay attention to how tired I look or how much hair I have left. Second, I needed some equipment. I had to make a decision between a phone and a camera. I needed a tripod because I'm a one-man show and I needed to be able to move around. I needed some extra batteries and other equipment. And I didn't want to be out here yelling at the camera, so I did get an external mic so I wouldn't bother Aaron or my neighbors too bad. Third, I needed some software to edit said videos and learn that software in a reasonable manner so I could make something at least a little bit engaging. I have computer experience, but I've never edited any video. I ended up going with Adobe Premiere Pro, and while I was learning that, I picked up Photoshop and Illustrator. As I've learned, they're all intertwined. Fourth, I need video ideas. No shortage there. I have a lot of those. I've been working out here in my shop for a long time. I have a whiteboard in my bedroom that has all my goals. Yes, I have a 4x8 foot whiteboard in my bedroom. I'm not showing you right now because I've been waking up in the middle of the night and writing ideas on it. It's a mess. Last week I missed the board entirely and wrote on the wall. I had to clean that off. But anyway, no shortage of ideas, a lot of content. It's more about finding the time at this point. Fifth, I need a way to get my message out. I don't expect that all of you are going to get all excited and start sharing this with everyone you know. I have no illusions about becoming a YouTube star and breaking the internet. I'm not that pretty or popular. But how do I get my message out then? I love racing and there are a lot of local tracks here. I could sponsor a kid, have them put a sticker on their go-kart for me. I mentioned earlier Photoshop. I created the banner for this channel. I'm thinking about getting some bigger stickers of that made. I think it would be cool. Also thinking about doing some coffee cups and t-shirts and other smaller things. I was thinking if I could actually get some projects and spaces from you guys. If you got selected to be showcased on the channel, I'd send you a box of goodies. So those are the types of things I've been thinking about on how to get my message out. Sixth, I needed to think about my time and what I could commit to regularly. Learning new equipment and software is kind of right up my alley, and I've been having a lot of fun with that recently. The shop time I don't expect to be too much different. I'm already out here. There'll be a little extra time setting up the camera, doing the tripod, moving it around and repositioning, but that shouldn't be too bad. The video editing is a little time consuming. I do hope I can improve my skills and get better there, a little more efficient in the future. And I've got to be honest with myself and a little bit conservative in how much content I can actually create. Looking at all of this, I believe I can produce 2 of these types of videos that have some decent production value, and then touch base once a week through a live stream that's more informal. Looking at my life, everything I have going on, my job, my family, my friends, and everything else, my shop time, these are the things that I believe I can commit to. Whew, that was a lot, but a good demonstration of how a goal can turn into a roadmap when you start answering the question, how do I get there? But you're not done yet. Once you have your roadmap, you have to execute. And you execute by doing two little things I like to call priority and habit. If you want to do anything in life, you have to make it a priority. It doesn't have to be your top priority, but you have to make time for it. A good example is when I started out here in the shop. When I was working on projects, I tried not to set a specific time limit, but otherwise I set a goal to get out in my shop every week. Sometimes that was an hour, sometimes that was 2 days straight, but I got out in the shop and I made time for it regularly. The funny thing is, if you keep making something a priority for long enough, it becomes a habit. And that's where the magic happens. Once something becomes a habit, you're on autopilot. It's the status quo. It's just who you are. And that's the magic. If you've made it through this introduction, I appreciate you. Click that like, subscribe, and share button for me. Help me achieve the channel goal and get others engaged and out in their shop. And get out there and try something yourself. Set a goal, create a roadmap, and execute by making it a priority until it becomes a habit. I believe in you. I'm in your corner. I'll always have your back. Until we meet again, look out for your brothers and sisters and remember our heritage.